Welcome to the Celiac Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Lucia Cordero, and this is where we get real about life with celiac disease. Each week, I'll share practical gluten-free tips, wellness hacks, and honest conversations about the emotional side of living with an autoimmune condition. Think of this as your weekly mix of support, relatability, and inspiration to help you not just survive, but thrive with celiac. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, I'm not a medical professional. Everything I share is based on my own experience living with celiac disease. This podcast is not medical advice, so please always consult your doctor about your own health. Hello guys, welcome back to the Celiac Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Lucia Cordero, and I'm so excited to get back on the mic with you guys today for a solo episode. I hope you guys tuned in to my very first guest episode last week with Natasha. It was seriously so fun. I'm so excited that she got to come on the podcast and we got to just go to the studio and yap about being gluten-free, living in New York and Chicago and working in marketing and all the things. So definitely go check out that episode if you haven't yet. But today's episode I think is going to be really special and relatable to so many of you guys, especially if you do have celiac disease. And I also think this episode will be super useful for those of you that listen to the podcast that don't have celiac disease, but have someone in your life that does have celiac disease, whether it's a friend member or a family member, a child, a spouse, a parent, a sibling. I think this will be one of those episodes that you can send to those loved ones to just help them better understand what celiac disease really is and how they can really be a good supportive figure in your life and how they can really help you. So I'm going to do a deep dive on what celiac disease really is for education and awareness. And then I'm also just going to share personally what I wish that my friends and family knew about celiac disease and what they could actually do to help, so that you guys can share this with your friends and family so that they can just learn more about celiac disease and learn how to best support people in their life that do have celiac disease. Because obviously our friends and family do want the best for us, and this episode can just help them understand really what celiac disease is and how they can be the most supportive. So I'm really excited to get into that. Feel free to send this episode to a family member or a friend. But first, it's time for our weekly segments. So we're starting with our news of the week. So a new study found that about 1 in 10 people who don't have celiac disease report feeling sensitive to gluten or wheat. That's over 10% of the population, which is really crazy. And also the researchers found that this sensitivity shows up more often in women, about 14% of women compared to 7% of men. And people that report gluten or wheat sensitivity are more likely to experience things like IBS, anxiety, and depression. So this is referring to non-celiac gluten or wheat sensitivity, which is known as like a disorder of gut-brain interaction. So it's not necessarily celiac disease, but it is related to your intestines and your gut-brain axis. And I just find this really interesting because there's so many conversations about gluten-related disorders, and whether it's celiac or a sensitivity, it seems like there's just more and more people that need to have gluten-free diets, and this conversation keeps evolving. And it's really important that we understand how gluten affects people differently, and this just helps us have better treatments for all of the different types of gluten disorders out there, and better understanding of the differences between what would affect someone with celiac disease, like cross-contamination, versus what maybe would not affect someone that has a gluten intolerance or sensitivity. So really interesting data to just be aware of. It is kind of crazy that that's over 10% of the population has a gluten sensitivity, and this is outside of people that have celiac disease. All right, moving on to my gluten-free fave of the week. If you follow me on social media, you probably know this because I'm literally posting a spring bone bowl every single day. It's kind of a problem, but I'm obsessed with spring bone. It's a New York City chain, so if you don't live in New York City, next time you visit, you need to go check it out. It's such a good, like, fast casual place. Think like a Chipotle bowl, but literally the entire place is gluten-free, so you don't have to worry about celiac. You don't have to worry about cooking. It's so amazing to just know that everything there is naturally gluten-free, and it's just really healthy. They're seed oil-free. They have really great ingredients. Their protein is grass-fed, and I'm so obsessed with their meals. As someone that's really on the go and doesn't really have time to prepare these like extravagant home-cooked meals, Springbone kind of feels like a home-cooked meal, and it's just so delicious. You know, you're getting like a well-rounded, nutritious meal that's made in a really safe celiac way. So I'm so obsessed with Springbone. I was actually there today picking up lunch at 12:30, and it was a zoo, guys. Word is getting out, so I feel like I should probably try and gatekeep Springbone, but I think they're honestly past that point. There's no gatekeeping Springbone, so I might as well share it with all of you. It's truly the best place, and they have a bunch of different locations in the city, and their menus kind of change by location. So some locations have like milkshakes and smoothies and burgers and French fries, and some places just kind of stick to their bowls and their bone broths, but they have such a great menu. So definitely go check it out if you're in New York City or next time you're here. And now it is time to get in to the meat of the episode. No, I did not come up with a new way to segue. But first up, I really just want to start with explaining what celiac disease actually is. I realized that I kind of started this podcast and we haven't really level set on exactly what celiac disease is, because I assume, a lot of you guys listening to this podcast do have celiac disease. You maybe don't need a refresher, but since this is for our friends and family, I really want to dive deep into what actually is celiac disease so that everyone is on the same page and really understands it. Because I think there's a lot of confusion out there, misinformation about celiac disease, and a lot of people think it's something that it's not. And just having the facts out there is really important to spread awareness and education about celiac disease. So, celiac disease is an autoimmune disorder. It's not a food preference. It's not a diet trend. It's not a fad. Basically, when someone with celiac eats gluten, and gluten is a protein that's found in wheat, barley, rye, malt, their immune system attacks their small intestine. So it's not a fad, it's not an intolerance, it's not like something you're just doing for fun. Eating gluten-free is really the only cure to this autoimmune disorder. It's not just eating gluten-free for a little bit, it's really a strict, lifelong gluten-free diet, because even a small crumb can cause measurable damage to your small intestine if you have celiac disease. It really is very serious, and I think a lot of people underestimate the gravity of what a crumb of gluten can do, because it's really hard to comprehend how much a small crumb can really affect you, especially since with celiac disease, you're not facing immediate death if you have a crumb of gluten. It's not like a peanut allergy where you're like immediately going to pass away and die. So it's not that like immediate reaction like an allergy where you have hives or swelling, but that damage is very serious and it happens deep internally and it happens over time. So it's really important to be hypervigilant about it, because basically what's happening on a biological level is that when your body ingests gluten, your body mistakes gluten as an invader and attacks the small intestine's villi. And those are those parts of your small intestines that absorb nutrients from food. So if those small intestines villi are damaged, your body is literally unable to absorb vitamins, minerals, and calories. So it's not just about like having stomach pain, it's really about the damage that gluten is causing your body. And this can lead to like really serious health issues, or, the common celiac symptoms that people report, like anemia, fatigue, brain fog, infertility, osteoporosis, and even neurological issues. So that's why it's serious. That's why it's not something that you can just cheat on your gluten-free diet, because that damage is going to be happening to your body no matter what. And this damage really does have serious long-term consequences. if you are still eating gluten or poorly managing your gluten-free diet as someone with celiac disease. So over time, this causes chronic malnutrition because your body's unable to absorb nutrients. It can cause anemia from deficiencies. It can cause osteopenia or osteoporosis, which is something that I've been facing. It can cause fertility issues, neurological symptoms, fatigue, depression, anxiety, and it can even increase your risk for serious diseases. It's not just about like these symptoms that you're trying to manage from chronic inflammation, but it raises your risk for autoimmune and cancerous conditions like other autoimmune diseases, intestinal lymphoma, small bowel cancers, liver disease, so many different things, which I know this is a lot. This is probably a little bit scary to you, but if you do have a strict gluten-free diet, meaning you're having no traces of gluten, no cross-contamination, someone with celiac's cancer and mortality risks return to like normal levels. So there is hope here, and we have made a ton of progress. If you look at the history, it's really interesting because the gluten-free diet was not identified as a treatment for celiac disease until like the 1940s and the 1950s. So before that, people literally just died because they had no idea how to manage it. So it is really cool to see how far we've come with treating celiac disease. Most children that were diagnosed with celiac disease before the 1940s or 1950s did not survive past early childhood because they became severely malnourished. And it wasn't until a pediatrician discovered the gluten-free diet during World War II when celiac disease became something that could be treated, and lives were literally saved by discovering this treatment of the gluten-free diet. So it really is a life-changing diet, and celiac disease used to be a fatal disease, and now it's something that's a manageable lifelong condition, which is really so incredible to see how far we've come in not even 100 years. Like, that's really, really crazy. It's crazy to think that if I was born 100 years ago, like, I wouldn't have lived to be 26 years old. Like, that's really, really insane. All of that to say, there's so much hope for people with celiac disease. It is something that's manageable, but you just have to be aware of it. You have to be disciplined about it, and you have to follow a strict gluten-free diet. But if you do that, you can have a full, healthy, and normal lifespan. But it's just important to know, and important for friends and family of someone with celiac to know, that even occasional cheating or cross-contamination can delay healing and keep your immune system in this constant state of inflammation. And it can really take a lot of time for the small intestine to fully heal after going gluten-free. So it's just like, it's really important to stay vigilant about it. So I know it's like really common for people to be like, oh, can you just like have a little bite of gluten? Like, it's not going to hurt you. Like, the truth is, it really is going to hurt you. And it's not about not wanting to have gluten or willpower. It's literally just about wanting to have a healthy, normal life. Eating gluten-free as someone with celiac disease is treatment. It's not a choice. Another aspect of being gluten-free that is important to just understand is that being gluten-free isn't just about buying the gluten-free bread at the grocery store. It's really about being super intentional about the ingredients in every single item you are consuming, from soy sauce to soups, salad dressings, cross-contamination of shared oils with French fries, chicken, seasonings. Even in your medications, you can find gluten. Even in your lip balm, you can find gluten. So it really is something that takes a lot of care and attention to be fully gluten-free. I think the easiest part about being gluten-free is just buying the gluten-free bread. But the hardest part is like all of the gluten that hides in all of these different foods and products. Another thing that's really difficult is cross-contamination, and that's kind of one of the hardest things to explain to people. So if you toast a gluten-free bagel in the same exact toaster that a regular bagel was toasted in, that's cross-contamination, and that's enough of a trace of gluten to make someone with celiac sick and to cause that autoimmune response in their body. So the same thing goes for like sharing cutting boards, spoons, and even just like using the same knife. So it's really, really important to be mindful of cross-contamination. And it is true that even that smallest trace and that smallest amount really causes damage. Understanding all of this and what celiac disease really is, and I'm not trying to speak for everyone that has celiac disease, but just from conversations that I've had and from my own experience, I really think that the hardest part about living with celiac disease is just the mental and emotional toll that it takes on you from having to think about food 24/7 and always having to think about whether food is celiac safe or not. It can be really exhausting because we eat a lot. We eat at least 3 times a day. There's so many social events centered around food, work events centered around food. And it's just a lot to think about 24/7 in terms of what's safe, what might make you sick, and how to ask for and advocate for what you need without feeling like a burden. And I think that mental fatigue is really what is the most exhausting because you always have to have it on your mind. You're constantly planning ahead, and it can also just feel isolating because food is, something that a lot of people like to celebrate with. It's how a lot of people connect, and it can be difficult when something as simple as just like trying to share a meal with someone becomes a whole ordeal. So it can just be tiring, I think, managing celiac disease. And I think that's a good segue into digging more into what I wish my friends and family really knew about celiac disease, now that we have like the context for what celiac disease is and what it's really like managing it. So I have a few points here that I think are really important for friends and family members of someone with celiac disease to know. First is that it is very serious. It's a lifelong condition and it's not a preference. It's a lifelong autoimmune condition that requires constant management and a holistic approach. You're always having follow-ups with your celiac doctor. You're checking on your blood work again. You might be getting a second endoscopy. I had a second endoscopy this summer. There's always something that you're trying to manage and track with it, and it really does take a lot of time. And even though I've had celiac now for over half my life, it's something I've really gotten used to. It's still something that I think about every single day, every meal, every social plan, every trip, and it's always on my mind. Also, another thing that's important for everyone to know is that you still might have symptoms with celiac disease, even if you're super careful. I think sometimes people without celiac disease can think it's so black and white, like, oh, okay, you're perfectly cured now. Like, no, like managing an autoimmune disease does take a lot of attention. You can still have symptoms that will last forever or different side effects or complications. Like for me, something this year that I was adjusting to was managing osteopenia and figuring out a treatment plan for that. So it just feels like there's always something that you have to think about and something that you're trying to manage. Also, I think this is a little self-explanatory, but not having gluten is not high maintenance. It's literally just taking care of your health. One of my pet peeves is that a lot of people will kind of poke fun at you for being gluten-free because they're like, oh, wow, you're so healthy. And they'll make jokes about you being healthy for being gluten-free. And I honestly find it a little bit annoying because me eating gluten-free isn't me trying to be healthier than the average person. It's literally just me trying to be normal. Being gluten-free is a necessity. Me having a gluten-free diet just means that I am surviving at a normal baseline with other people. So it's not about being healthier. It's literally just about having the baseline health that every human without celiac disease has. I think that's like a little bit of a misconception. Another thing that's important that I mentioned earlier is that cross-contamination really matters. I think it's so hard to fathom this, but really a crumb of gluten or a trace of gluten or eating a piece of toast that was in the same toaster as a regular piece of bread really causes damage to someone with celiac disease. I think because of that, if I'm like at a friend's house or a family member's house and they're cooking something, it means the world, and I really appreciate it when someone goes the extra mile to make something safe for me. But because cross-contamination is something that's so tricky and it's really hard to cook something safely in that way in a kitchen where you're not really used to managing that, it's sometimes safer to just bring your own food when a friend is hosting something, just so you know that the food was prepared in a way that is celiac safe. And it's nothing against that friend or that person that was trying to cook something for you, but it's just about really wanting to stay safe and just knowing that, the cross-contamination is something that you really have to be mindful of. And it's something that is really hard for someone that doesn't have celiac to be cognizant of. And because of that, sometimes with celiac, you have to politely decline certain foods because of the way that they were cooked. And it's never about your effort or your cooking. It's just about kind of the mental sanity of wanting to keep your peace of mind and know that something is 100% safe. I also think something really important that a lot of people feel with celiac disease is we don't want to be singled out. We don't want to feel like a burden. We don't want our dietary needs to affect the people that we love in our lives. I seriously never want anyone to be stressed about my diet or feel like they have to change their plans because of me or like make extra accommodations for me. If friends or family are hosting me at their house, I am literally always happy to bring my own food or snacks, order my own meal on Uber Eats. I do genuinely really appreciate it when people go out of their way to include a gluten-free option. I think that's the nicest thing in the world, but it's completely unnecessary. Like, I never want to feel like a burden to someone. I also never want someone to be offended if they make something gluten-free, but then I don't want to eat it for whatever reason, or I don't know for sure if it's 100% celiac safe. Separately, like going out to eat with family or friends, like my friends and family, they're so nice. Like anytime we go out to eat, they're always like checking to make sure that the place has gluten-free options. I also think living in New York, pretty much most places have gluten-free options. It's hard to find a place that doesn't. But I think just something that I would want people to know is that like it's so kind of them to be thinking about that. But I'm really fine to go wherever. I'm happy to just like eat a salad. I feel like most places have salads, and I'm not so worried about having like a special gluten-free meal wherever we're going out to eat. Continuing in the theme of like what I wish people knew in terms of eating and social situations with someone with celiac disease, just because I have celiac disease does not mean that you can't eat gluten in front of me. I am totally fine with you eating gluten. It seriously does not bother me at all. It makes sense that you would eat gluten. I would eat gluten too if I didn't have celiac disease. So I know sometimes people just like feel a little bit weird eating bread in front of me, and they'll apologize and they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry to eat this in front of you. And I'm like, you're totally good. Like, I don't care. Eat all the gluten you want. As long as I'm not eating it, I'm good. Also, I think sometimes people feel awkward talking about how like great their food is if it has gluten in it. Like if they're having like a really good cake or really good pizza or piece of bread or something. And like, you don't need to feel awkward about saying how good your food is. I'm not sitting there secretly sad that I can't eat the food that you're eating. Like, I'm happy for you that you're enjoying your glutinous food. Like, that's great. I would love to hear about how delicious your bread or your cake is if that's what you're eating. So seriously, don't feel bad at all for eating gluten in front of me, for talking about how good the gluten is. I feel like I really understand like the intention behind that. Like, they don't want to, make me feel sad or like I'm missing out or left out. But I really don't feel that way at all. I think, people with celiac disease, especially if you've had it for a while, I can get how maybe it's different for someone that's first adjusting to celiac disease. It can be like a tough adjustment, and, maybe they do need some extra care in that scenario. But for people that have been gluten-free for years and have had celiac disease for a while, I'm literally watching people eat gluten every single day. It does not bother me at all. And I feel so much better about it if you just eat what you want to and don't let my own dietary needs dictate what you can eat or what you can talk about while you eat. Like, I understand the intention behind it, but seriously, it does not bother me at all. And it just kind of makes me feel like a burden whenever people bring that up. It's interesting because I would never, I have a bunch of friends that are, I have friends that don't eat meat or are vegetarians, and I wouldn't apologize for eating meat in front of them. Or I wouldn't apologize for eating dairy in front of someone that's lactose intolerant. We just all have our different dietary needs and restrictions, and we respect each other's, but that doesn't mean that you can't eat what's good for you in front of me and vice versa. I think that that's something that I've just noticed over the years. I think, people can just start to feel like a little awkward around someone that's gluten-free at a table, but it really doesn't need to be awkward. Like, my diet needs don't have anything to do with yours. You can enjoy what you love, enjoy all the gluten. I just have to avoid it, and that's that. Another thing is, like, honestly, and this is ironic to say because I literally created a podcast to talk all about celiac disease, but I'm kind of tired of talking about celiac disease and gluten. Like, it seems like almost every meal it has to come up with people because I always get asked about it, especially I think, with friends that I see all the time in the city, they're so used to me ordering my gluten-free meal, talking to the waiter, just kind of handling it on my own. We move on. We don't even talk about it. It's like not a big deal. But I think for people that I don't see as frequently, or people that I'm like just catching up with every few months, or maybe I only see them like once a year or something, we're usually catching up over food. And because of that, if we're, at a restaurant, which is usually the case, I, make a point to talk to the waiter about, okay, like I have celiac disease, I can't have gluten, like what are the best options for me? And, have a conversation with them about what's on the menu. And because I have that conversation with the waiter, everyone else at the table kind of like starts talking about me being gluten-free and having celiac disease. And it becomes like this whole topic of conversation, which again, I understand the positive intention behind it and, people just genuinely care and like want to ask about it and talk about it. But I think for me, it's like in those situations, I only get to see these certain groups of people so many times. Like, I get to see my friends in the city a lot, but like my friends that don't live in the city or family members that I only get to see like, maybe once a year, once every couple of years. There's so many things to talk about life. And I think it's just annoying to me that every time I like go out to eat with like people, 20 minutes of the conversation ends up being dedicated to me having celiac disease and me being gluten-free and gluten-free foods. And again, I know people are just trying to be nice and ask me about my life, but I just have had that conversation so many times at this point. And for me, it's like, I'd rather talk about other things with people that I don't get to see as often. So I guess that's something that I would want people to know. Like, I understand why people want to ask about it. And if they are genuinely curious, I am happy to talk about it. It is a big part of my life at the end of the day. It's something that I am thinking about every day, but it's kind of one of those things where I feel like I end up having the same conversation over and over again. Like, oh, do you, miss having gluten? Or like, so sorry that we're eating all this gluten in front of you. It kind of like, it ends up being the same conversation over and over again. And it just kind of goes back to like being singled out and having to talk about being gluten-free when it's like, I'm kind of tired of having to talk about it because like I already have to deal with it 24/7. I really don't feel like talking about it any more than that. At the same time, it is something that I'm passionate about, and I did start a whole podcast about it. So I guess that's a little bit of a two truths can be true at once kind of thing. And that's not really like a fully formed out thought, but just something that I've really noticed that I'd rather just not have to talk about being gluten-free. Like, I know we're eating, and I know I'm ordering a gluten-free version of something, and that can just be that. It doesn't have to be a whole conversation because, I only get to see you for 2 hours in an entire year, and I don't want to spend 30 minutes of that time talking about my autoimmune condition. Also, I think like, especially if I'm going out to eat with family members that are older than me, I think because they watched me grow up with celiac disease, they like feel this kind of like parental need to kind of figure out the gluten-free menu for myself, especially my parents. Like, they're very protective in that sense. But I think, I'm 26 years old. Like, if I go out to eat, I can handle myself. I can worry about my own gluten-free diet and gluten-free menu. I can navigate that on my own. It's not something that anyone else needs to be worried about. Also with like ordering appetizers. And again, like this is just because everyone in my life is so nice. I feel like people are always like, oh, we need to get appetizers that Lucia can eat. Like literally, I'm totally fine with people ordering appetizers that I can't eat. And I really appreciate people asking and caring about my preferences, but I don't want my dietary needs to dictate what everyone else at the table can be eating. So I always make a point whenever I go out with friends to be like, please don't worry about me. Just like order whatever appetizers you guys want. Like I'm happy to just get my own thing. But I obviously, like I always do appreciate when people ask and care, but I guess I want people to know that like I genuinely am totally fine with just ordering my own thing. Like you guys do you. Don't want to take away from your culinary experience. Other things that I would like for my family and friends to know is like when it comes to social gatherings and, you know, people hosting at their place or something, genuinely, I really appreciate the effort, but you genuinely do not need to provide a gluten-free option for me unless that's just something that you already want to do or there's other people that are also gluten-free. But seriously, I don't want people to feel pressured to have a special gluten-free dessert at their birthday party or dish or dinner party. Like it's your celebration. I'd rather like you focus on like what you need for your party, and like I can always bring my own gluten-free option if I need to. I remember like growing up, and you know, this is different because at the time I was a kid, so maybe this is just like sweet, but my mom used to make like all of the birthday cakes gluten-free, which is so nice, especially for like a kid growing up. But now at this point in my life, like being an adult, I'm 26, like I don't need other people's birthday cakes to be made gluten-free. Like their birthday cake doesn't need to revolve around my dietary needs unless they just really want me to have the cake too. So I think that's something that's just like really unnecessary. I will always make a point before I'm going to something to ask if there's going to be gluten-free options. But me asking that doesn't mean that I expect that there will be. I'm just trying to plan ahead. I'm totally fine if there's no gluten-free options at whatever event there is, but I just need to know so that I can plan ahead and bring my own thing or eat before. So I never expect for there to be gluten-free options wherever I'm going, but I just want to have the information beforehand just so I can plan ahead. Other things that I think are important for people to know if you're in the kitchen making for someone with celiac disease, I think just always ask before cooking. I think it's always better to ask, is this safe, than like assume that something's celiac safe, because there are so many like confusing things. Even as someone with celiac disease, I've made mistakes. So someone without celiac disease is bound to make mistakes, whether it's like with oats or cross-contamination. So I think it's always just better to ask first. And I think it's also totally fine to be like, sorry, like I know I'm hosting this, but I didn't have time to get gluten-free options, or I wasn't really sure what you needed. Are you fine to bring your own? Like that's totally valid. One thing though, if you are preparing something for someone that has celiac, I think just keeping the ingredient labels handy. You don't need to like know everything off the top of your head or know if something has gluten in it or not, but I think just having the packaging or the ingredients list handy so the person with celiac disease can go and look at it and decide for themselves, I think that's really helpful. I think being mindful of cross-contamination is so important, but again, I know that's so challenging, so I think that's really the main reason why it's difficult to host someone that has celiac disease. So I think just being mindful of asking them and just like being honest. If you know that you use the same cutting board or knife for the gluten-free bread and the regular bread, just be honest about it, because those small crumbs really do matter. Same with like double dipping with like knives or jam or peanut butter. Like you can't have any gluten contaminating those condiments and then used for something that's gluten-free. It's like so much to keep track of, and it's a lot. So I think just like when in doubt, just let the person with celiac disease handle things and don't feel like you have to go out of your way to make something safe for them, because we can always just bring our own options. I think we're happy to do that. Another thing is if you're traveling with someone with celiac disease, they might just need to do some extra planning, or you might need to go on a side quest with them. When I was in New Orleans the other week, my mom went with me to CVS because I could not find a good gluten-free breakfast. So I ended up just buying some hard-boiled eggs at CVS. So just being willing to go on a side quest with your celiac friend or family member is very much appreciated. Also, if you're sharing like an Airbnb or a kitchen space in a hotel, just being mindful of keeping things celiac safe and being aware of that is really, really important. And just some other, things that I think people with celiac disease want our friends and family to know from an emotional standpoint is just really validating our experience and acknowledging that celiac disease is something that's serious. We're not being high maintenance by trying to manage a strict gluten-free diet. And then respecting our boundaries. If we don't feel safe eating something, but you think it's completely gluten-free and completely celiac safe, just respect us saying no and not wanting to eat something. I think a lot of us are just really nervous that we're going to accidentally have gluten. And we know that everyone in our lives has positive intentions and isn't trying to gluten us intentionally. But a lot of times we would just rather have peace of mind and not eat something rather than take the risk if we're not 100% confident. So I think just respecting that if there's something that we don't want to eat, it's not because we don't trust you. It's not because your cooking is bad. It's just because we're nervous and want to have our peace of mind. So really the big picture of all of these things that people with celiac disease want our loved ones to know is that we really just want to feel normal and safe and included. And we don't expect you guys to know every single ingredient or every single rule, but just to be understanding, respectful of our health, our dietary need and treatment, and just being there for us. But you don't have to break your back to have gluten-free options, but just understanding the gravity of celiac disease and managing it. All right, that was a lot. I hope this was really helpful for you if you have someone in your life that has celiac disease, and just gave you more understanding and insights into what it's really like having celiac disease, managing it, and what we want our loved ones to know. If you have celiac, I'm sure you found this relatable. Let me know what you think in the comments, and definitely share this episode with your friends and family because, I think this is a lot of information. And sometimes it's easier to just share this information with a friend or family via podcast. Let me be the girl that explains it for you. That's exactly why I wanted to make this episode, so people with celiac disease can have something to send their friends and family. So don't be shy about doing that. I think your friends and family do really want to support you and would be excited to listen to this. I hope everyone learned something new about celiac disease with this episode. I think the more people that understand really what celiac disease is, the easier it becomes for everyone with celiac disease to just live healthy, full lives and to really thrive and feel safe at more restaurants and social events and just be able to enjoy life. So thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I will see you next week. I think I have another guest on the pod next week, so stay tuned for that. Very exciting things coming. Don't forget to follow the show, rate and leave a review, and I will catch you guys next Wednesday. Bye. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Celiac Diaries podcast. I hope you're leaving with a tip, a story, or just a little inspiration to live your best life with celiac. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. I'll see you back here next Wednesday. And until then, stay well.